What's good, everybody? Welcome in to the Early Edge and our Super Bowl mega preview. It is never too early to start thinking about a week from Sunday. The Eagles out of the NFC, the Chiefs out of the AFC, and some breaking news off the top of the show just came down a couple of minutes ago. Sean Payton will be the next head coach for the Denver Broncos, and DeMeco Ryans, the defensive coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers, he will be the new head coach for the Houston Texans. So congratulations to both of those men. Now, these two teams playing in the Super Bowl, they will have no such coaching issues because they are locked and loaded with two guys they love very, very much. So when we do a mega preview, there's only one way that we're going to do it. There's only one way that I can think of with the crew that I get to work with on a daily basis. How about going 6 wide? Let's bring in the stars of the show because it doesn't get any better than this. First and foremost, he's been here since day freaking one. It's our third maestro, Mr. Larry Hartstein. Good afternoon.
There must be a big game on the horizon when I see this crop of characters around me. Let's go.
Let's go. And right next to him, he's everything NFL at SportsLine for us. You have a question, he's got the answer. He is the stoic one. RJ White, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. SportsLine props guide posted on CBS just now. A ton of lines on the game. Going to put a lot more up. A lot of analysis too. Links to all the SportsLine content all in one place. Just Google Super Bowl props guide at SportsLine, and it'll come up as a CBS post.
It's one of the great things you can read every single year. RJ spends so much time on that. It's worth the entire year that you would pay just for that. RJ, thank you very much. Now, this man is all things NFL, tennis, college football, college basketball. He can do it all. Live from Nashville, Tennessee, the penthouse level, M Square. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Coach. This is the most important hour of the week, as I say every week. I am so happy to see everyone on the show for this one. It's obviously our Chiefs, Alex and his Eagles. I'm rocking the Eagles colors today, maybe to troll, maybe to support. We'll find out here in a little bit.
Well, then let's go to the man right next to him because he's everything Philadelphia, but we have no idea where he lives because he is live from parts unknown. Proppy 3 times. Good afternoon. Working on a Tuesday, I see.
Working on a Tuesday, Coach. Good afternoon, guys. I'm super stoked. I'm honored just to be a part of this hour. With Sports, look at this lineup. I am so psyched.
And who is that behind you so interested in our prop show today or our mega preview?
That is Margot making an appearance.
Yeah, Goose must be in the lab right now. I knew that was Margot doing work. Now, finally, he is the counselor of cash. And I think I'm very proud of myself. Because I did not tease you at all, but we did have an answer to the question, Sia. Can you Venmo the same person twice in a 24-hour period? The answer was yes. The answer was yes. Good afternoon, sir.
With that in mind, I do want to congratulate the two best teams to making it to the Super Bowl, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Philadelphia. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. I forgot. So anyway, yeah, Kansas City, Philadelphia. This is going to be a nice matchup. I can't wait to break this down.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. We are going to do our sides. We're going to do our totals. Then we're going to get to props on both sides of the fence. It's going to flow. It's going to move, but that's what we're here for. By the way, in the meantime, go ahead and hit that like button for me. It really helps the show grow. It helps our algorithm and just helps us be number one. That's all we're trying to do. So let's start with the side because right now this has kind of been moving around, but it's settled in Eagles -1.5 and the total 49.5 we'll get to in a second. But Mikey, I want to start with you. Because do you think that this is the right number and the Eagles should be favored by just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I can get behind it. I think that the number should be a pick 'em in this specific situation here. I think if Patrick Mahomes were 100%, I think the line would be flipped. Probably lands at 2 to 2.5. Not quite strong enough to get to a 3. But considering his status and the status of the weapons that he has, I think it's mostly fair here. I make this game basically a pick 'em. The Eagles minus 0.2 points better in the simulation here. Essentially a pick 'em across the board. It all comes down to how healthy can Patrick Mahomes be and what do his weapons look like by the time this game starts.
And that's a great point. Maestro, as we come to you on the side of things, the Chiefs have been a team that as underdogs, they've been really, really good because it hasn't happened very much. Do you think they'll like this role as the underdog in this game?
Yeah, I think they relished it against the Bengals, even though they closed as favorites. They relished the talk that the Bengals own them and they had something to prove. And I just think it's funny because, I think the most important injuries are Willie Gay and L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed is the top corner. They lost him in the first quarter against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And to win that game without your top corner and 3 rookies that were back there in the secondary, that was impressive regardless of the calls. And I was on the Bengals. So, that was very impressive to me, how those rookie corners stepped up. We won't find out anything till tomorrow in terms of these injuries. Willie Gay, an important linebacker, and those receivers that are hurt. Everyone said all season they don't have any receivers. When then the receivers went down, they were like, what's Patrick Mahomes going to do? Well, he still has Travis Kelce. He still has MVS, who we finally saw show up. And he's got Isaiah Pacheco coming out of the backfield. All of that said, I'm leaning Eagles just because – this is the better roster top to bottom. When you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal compared to Mahomes getting whatever hundreds of millions, you are just able to build a much better, deeper roster. And I think that's shown throughout the season. With Jalen Hurts, they're 16-1.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. When you just look at the data and you just look at the numbers, and RJ, the numbers is exactly what we're talking about right now. Do you think part of the reason the Eagles are favored is because the Chiefs lost so many players Sunday night, and we have no idea right now the status of Tony or this guy or that guy? We just don't know yet.
Yeah, if you look at it in a bubble, you say Kadarius Toney is not worth any points on the line. If he gets hurt, you don't move the line. If somebody else on there, Juju Smith-Schuster gets hurt, you don't move the line. If Mecole Hardman gets hurt, you don't move the line. If all of them get hurt, then that's a cluster injury for a position group, and that's something a team can exploit. And it's just hard to get over when you have pile injuries on top of injuries at one position. Then you go to the cornerbacks. I know that Larry was saying that the guys held up well against 2 very good receivers. They also got to face an offensive line that was under siege, and just getting pressure on Burrow over and over again. That's not going to happen with the Eagles. They have a much better offensive line, stocked with veterans. A little can exploit it here and there, but typically very well graded across the front. So I don't think that they're going to have as much success getting pressure on Hurts immediately, and then he'll have time to throw. And then these rookies have to hold up against another pair of really good receivers. So I think that's going to be a key factor in this game. And that's why you see this line where it is. It's really all about the injuries. If we do get good news on injuries next week, it's going to creep back to Kansas City and be at least a pick 'em, maybe even Kansas City -1.
It's going to be interesting to see, what the next 6 or 7 days does to this. But we'll really hone in on Sunday, February 12th, to really figure it out. Let's switch now to the total. See, let me come to you next, because right now it sits at 49.5. And we've seen that throughout this postseason, the under has been the play. With the number where it is right now, is your initial reaction that the under is the play?
I'm close, and it kind of depends on some of this injury news that we talked about with Tony, with Hardman, with Juju Smith-Schuster. I think it's one of those situations where the Eagles, especially with that offensive line, I think they're going to be able to move the ball pretty well against the Chiefs. And I also think the Chiefs are probably going to have to abandon the run. I just don't think they're going to be successful there. Listen, the Eagles defense is good across all levels, but I think they're going to have to resort to the pass, which could lead to more incompletions, more chunk plays. I'm leaning towards the over here, especially if the receivers end up being healthy.
All right, Mikey, let me come to you, because we've seen both teams at times this year be very prolific offensively, but then the second half of the season, the Chiefs were kind of that team that just wanted to get in and get out with a win. They were horrible against the spread, and sometimes we have to turn to this total. What do you think about this total right now?
Yeah, I think it's just a touch too high personally. I make the number 47. I understand why it is where it is, but I do have a pretty decent lean towards the under. It's something I'll again be looking to live bet. Looking at the path to victory and success in general in terms of scoring in this game, I think for Philly, it definitely comes through Miles Sanders. It comes through the ground game in some capacity. Yes, they're going to take their deep shots, but I think that they're going to be relatively conservative overall. And then on the Kansas City side, considering the weapons that they have, we're not expecting them to necessarily hit home runs and have massive, massive plays. I think that their success definitely is what they always do, right? It's long, methodical drives, take 6-7 minutes off the clock. Hopefully you score a touchdown. You might have to settle for a field goal. Perfect conditions to do so here. So I have a pretty strong lean to the under in this one. And then finally, one more really fun stat in this game. Whichever team wins this game will have won more games at State Farm Field this season than the team that plays all of their home games there, the Arizona Cardinals.
Wait a second. So the Chiefs have already won there, and the Eagles won there as well.
They both played their under this year and won. Yep.
Really?
They won one home game. Whoever wins this is guaranteed to have won more games in that building than the team that plays there.
Good job, Cliff Kingsbury. Solid. You can hear me in Taiwan right now. Solid effort there on your home field. It's ridiculous. Great stat, Mikey. I had
so
not seen
good.
that. So good. So good. RJ, if I was to tell you the over is going to come in, which team would have to score first?
Scoring first, I think probably the Chiefs would be the better bet there. The Eagles then might have to abandon their run a little bit and go. They're not going to do it right out the gate. But if the Eagles are playing from behind, they don't get to be as run focused, chewing the clock out. They probably feel they have to score quickly and go a little bit more up tempo. So I think that would be a case for the over going hitting. I think the case you need for the over hitting is a competitive game, really, because if it is competitive, then these teams are going back and forth. That's going to help there, especially in the first half. Then if it becomes a blowout, one team can sit on the lead, run the ball, drain the clock. And then you see that then an under is going to come there. We saw that with the Eagles and 49ers game where, of course, that quarterbacks had to deal with that there. But Eagles didn't have to do too much in that second half. And it really showed on the scoreboard. I think they probably could have scored a few more points.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The competitive nugget is the best one. We saw the Eagles just sit on the second half. That was a little bit different because of the quarterback situation, as you said, but still, it plays into that theory. So, Maestro, let me come to you. Last thought on the total from you. Is it too high, too low for you?
I'm definitely going to lean under, but I would wait because this is going to be bet up. It's always bet up before kickoff. Maybe you get a 51 at kickoff. You have the Eagles who want to rely on the run, and you have Jonathan Gannon who's not going to let Patrick Mahomes beat him deep. I mean, that's what he does. He makes you dink and dunk your way down the field. The other thing is we've had 7 straight unders in the playoffs since we had the overs in the early part of the wild card round. We had 7 straight unders. I think the reason the total is this high is just because you have 2 outdoor teams going indoors, perfect conditions. So it'll be interesting. It's not a strong lean for me right now, but if it got to 51, I would really consider it.
All right. Very, very good. So that is the side. That is the total. But we're going to go through all the props too, because one of the advantages of the Super Bowl and really Championship Sunday, we saw it as well, is the props come up a lot earlier. So let's start with the Chiefs pass props. And Proppy, I made you sit there for so long. I'm going to have you go first here. When you look at Mahomes and this passing offense, the one thing that we can be sure of is that last week he was going to the over and he went well over 300 yards. His prop right now is around 286.5, the exact same number it was last Sunday. Your thoughts on the Chiefs and their passing?
I think the number is quite big, actually. I think there's a little bit of value fading Mahomes' passing yards. For starters, we know that this Eagles secondary gave up the fewest passing yards in the NFL this season. This is the stingiest pass defense in the league. So a very good pass defense. Coupled with the fact, watching this Chiefs team, if they are banged up, if we see multiple guys missing in this game, they really struggled to move the ball against Cincinnati in the second half. With Kelsey getting bracketed, really just couldn't do anything outside of those penalties. That was really the only big chunk yards they picked up. So I think this is a much better Eagles defense, and I think Mahomes could struggle to move the ball, especially down the field. So I think there's a lot of value actually on Mahomes' under.
All right. Maestro, I will say this, that when I saw Patrick Mahomes play on Sunday, I saw a wiser quarterback, a more patient quarterback, and kind of the negatives they were talking about before the game, I thought were a positive. He played completely under control. Your thoughts on the Chiefs passing game and Mahomes?
Yeah, I mean, it's very impressive to do what he did with the way his ankle was, especially that throw where he stepped up in the pocket and just zipped one to MVS in the end zone, who was decently covered. I would actually lean over because I don't think the Chiefs are going to be able to run the ball much. I think he's going to drop back 35 to 40 times. I think he's going to complete a ton of short passes in front of these Eagles corners and especially the Eagles linebackers, who are the weakness of the team. That's the only weakness on the defense is the Eagles linebackers. So you could look for a lot of running back, tight end catches. I think eventually he will squeak over. I'm not saying it's going to be an efficient game, but I don't think they're going to have success running the ball, and they had no success running against the Bengals.
Well, we do have a best bet already here on our mega preview. Mikey, let me come to you because we saw last week the Chiefs really struggled to run the football, and there's no reason to believe after what we saw from the 49ers that they will be able to run the football against the Eagles. So if we get down into the red zone, it's going to be in the air, which could lead to, in your mind, what?
Patrick Mahomes over 1.5 passing touchdowns, not playing the full play individually at a massively juiced number, -230. I am playing it, though, in a same game parlay. That same game parlay for me is going to be the Chiefs plus 11.5, over 39.5 total points, and then over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Altogether, that's -109 over at Caesars. That's the way that I prefer to play this one here. I see a question in the chat about this also. You get all sorts of questions about wanting to tease when you get to games like this. I don't mind teasing it, but what you're trying to do with the question in the chat, teasing it to 42.5, I want you to try to just play an alternate line and not play the standard 6-point teaser. I want to bring that number down to 39.5. We need to get this number under the key number of 41 if you want to play over. There are just so many paths to the game, not necessarily getting over 42.5 still. So please do that if you're looking to tease it. If you have the ability, grab the alternate line on it.
AB, by the way, on Early Edge in 5 gave a great description. He's playing both teams to score at least 20 points and had a great reason why, and this would feed right into your over 39.5, right?
Yes, I didn't quite get on that show to type that in there, but yes, AB's play of both teams to score 20-plus points, that hit, and the user was asking why not just play the over in the game at that point. Look at the Cincinnati-Kansas City game. Both teams scored over 20 points. The under hit in that game.
There you go. And the number is 49.5, so you have like 9.5 points to play with, and if you do it Mikey's way, you got 10 points to play with. Mikey, thank you very much. Let's switch gears and go over to the Eagles side of things. And see, I'm coming to you first because Jalen Hurts, he's kind of been all over the place. Earlier in the season, he was running all the time. Then he gets hurt. They have called some running plays, but not as much. In the last couple of weeks, we've cashed his under with his legs. What do you make of him passing in this game?
Yeah, I see his number right in that 245-ish and a half range. And I actually like the under there. Listen, I do think the Eagles are going to be able to move the ball pretty well, a little bit through the run. But when I'm talking about the run, I'm talking about Jalen Hurts. I actually think he's going to rush a lot more in the Super Bowl than he has. And obviously, we know he's protecting that shoulder. But the passing number, I'm not a huge fan of. I'd probably be hitting the under. And if you just look at his game log, and granted, he missed 2 games or a couple games. And we don't know if he's been healthy the last few that he's played, but even prior to that, he wasn't hitting this number very often. And we see it here, at 243.5. And the juice is on the over because that number is actually a little lower than some of the other books have it. So I understand why the juice is on the over there. But to me, even at 243.5, I think I'm still on the under with Jalen Hurts.
All right. And probably when it comes to touchdowns, you can see that Jalen Hurts is juiced to the under 1.5, maybe for a lot of the same reasons that Sia did. How are you looking at Jalen Hurts for this game?
Yeah, I think we're looking at an inflated number as far as his passing yards is concerned. It's a big number. If you look at him over the course of the regular season, typically you'd see his passing line between 230, 238 yards. So definitely an uptick here. Definitely didn't see enough evidence either that he appears to be quite 100% throwing the football. I agree. I think the Eagles are going to rely heavily on the ground game, especially it's been so effective for them. So I think we're going to see potentially around 30 passing attempts from him. I just don't think the number quite justifies it. Would require a kind of a game environment where the Chiefs are really Eagles, forcing them to kind of abandon the run. To me, the number's just a little bit too big. So I lean under on both his yards and his touchdowns.
If we look, Maestro, out last week, and the Chiefs, I'll give them all the credit. And everybody knows I'm a Chiefs fan, but their defense played really, really well, especially against the run. If they have the same type of defense this way, I think they could try and force Jalen Hurts to throw the ball and say, hey, try and beat us. They got 2 A receivers, but I think that might be their approach this week. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot depends on L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, A.J. Brown could be in for a monster game if Sneed is out. And, that also affects the way they defend the run. If they have Sneed out there, they can commit more guys to trying to stop the running game. So, but if they don't, that means they need more people to watch A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, which means the Eagles can run the ball against lighter boxes. So to me, that's just something that I'm going to be heavily focused on this week.
All right. And as always, we'll have several more shows between now and Super Bowl Sunday. Somebody in the chat asked about a live show on Super Bowl Sunday. We will be doing one. We just don't know the time. We don't know how long. But best believe the Early Edge will lead the charge when it comes to Super Bowl shows. Now, let's go to the Chiefs rushing and receiving props. And Mikey, I want to come back to you because I know you're playing Mahomes in your same game parlay, but give me some names of a couple of receivers that you think could be on the receiving end of these touchdowns in the Super Bowl.
Well, one guy I want to talk about a lot. I also want to get some of the other guys' thoughts on him. Isaiah Pacheco. He has become involved in the passing game. He's essentially replaced Jerick McKinnon so far over the last 2 weeks. Now, having the additional week off and more time to prepare, I'm still going to be speculating on McKinnon as well. But I think both of these backs are going to be involved heavily in the passing game, especially if these receivers are so beat up like it seems like they're going to be. It's going to be a ton of Travis Kelce. Definitely not fading his unders, or not playing his unders. I think he certainly has the ability to go over on all of them. I prefer to look at him through simply scoring touchdowns. But yeah, I think Mahomes has kind of proven that it really doesn't matter who he's throwing the football to. He's able to somehow, some way get it done. But the ones I'm speculating most on, the one is actually going to be Isaiah Pacheco, which is funny because he's someone we typically only would consider rushing and would typically look to fade his receiving stuff throughout the year. He has become incredibly involved out there. They've got him returning kicks. They want the football in his hands.
I can't remember who it was. It was a national talent, but it said that Pacheco runs every single time he touches the ball like it's the last time he's going to touch the ball. And I thought that was a great, great, great thing to say. Yes,
Coach, can I just jump in here?
Yes.
Because the prop market for Pacheco's receiving yards has not opened. Like, they are worried about this. They don't know what to do with it. So you get McKinnon receiving yards, you get Pacheco combined, you get Pacheco rushing, but they will not put up the receiving yards prop.
Interesting.
If it's 12 or less, I'm over. I'm on the over.
If it's 12 or less receiving yards.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So, Proppy, let me come to you. What do you make of what Larry just said?
Yeah, it was really interesting to see Pacheco make a huge impact out of the backfield. Really didn't do much running the football. His presence was really felt, catching passes out of the backfield. Was really the most reliable target besides Kelce in that game. And then in the second half, they leaned on him very heavily. So with the amount of injuries, I agree this could be a good spot for him to continue to make an impact there. Was surprised to see McKinnon, his role significantly reduced. Normally, he's obviously catching a lot of passes. His receiving yards over the past 3, 4, 5 weeks made that huge impact in the second half of the season for the Chiefs. You could find his receiving line as high as 45 yards just 2 weeks ago. Now it's down to 21.5. So massive discount in comparison to what we saw McKinnon's lines earlier. If there's going to be injuries to these Chiefs wide receivers, they're going to still need Jerick McKinnon, in my opinion, out of the backfield to contribute through the air. He doesn't really do a lot on the ground. So definitely some opportunity, in my opinion, to buy very low on McKinnon, especially at 21.5 yards.
Yeah, I think you're spot on right there. They're going to need everybody. They're going to need everybody that they have that has played this year if they're going to win this game as a team. But, RJ, you heard Mikey say a name that is as automatic when it comes to showing up as you get. In my opinion, the greatest tight end in the history of the NFL, and that is Travis Kelce. And in a game like this, in games like this, number 87 has a nose for the end zone. What do you see?
Yeah, I have a best bet on him to score a touchdown -110. It's creeping up. I think it's going to keep creeping up. He's had touchdowns in every playoff game the last 2 years, in 8 of his last 9 playoff games. That one Super Bowl where they didn't score anything. I'm sure you remember that one. He did not get home there, but he has done it every time. Otherwise, the Phillies only allowed 3 touchdowns to tight ends in the regular season, but they haven't really played a ton of tight ends. I mean, we looked at the schedule yesterday on the Pick Six podcast with Prince, and it was like Dalton Schultz, and Pratt Freiermuth one game, and it's really not a top talent. Did limit Kittle last week, but of course, that was due to the quarterbacks. They didn't get their passing game going. So I think that this is something they could still exploit here. I'm not taking into account the Philly not allowing too many touchdowns to tight ends being like a club in their bag they're going to go to too much. I think Mahomes is still going to target Kelce plenty. Who else is he going to target? We don't know who's going to play in this game. And so I don't care what you do to Travis Kelce. You double cover him. He's still not, he's still open a lot of the time. He's still going to get his. So I think it's pretty clear he's going to score a touchdown in this game. -110 is right about 50-50 to do it, and considering his history, we should be on the high side of that to do it at the 50%. I think it should be a lot higher.
I've been saying it all day long. The reason we're giving out these picks on Tuesday, the week before, what did RJ just say? It's going to continue to creep up. And when you play an anytime touchdown at minus 140 or minus 150, well, now you're really hoping at minus 110, lock it in. Lock it in. Get that 40 cents or 50 cents, whatever it is. RJ, thank you very much. Now, let's go over to the Eagles side of things. We have not one, not two, but three best bets from the crew right now. See, I'm going to start with you because in games like this, it's always the quarterbacks looking for their star receivers. And last week, regardless of whether you want to say the 49ers should have thrown the flag or not, he was smart. He got up. You only had 15 seconds to decide, and they scored the touchdown, which changed everything in that game. And you like that player for the Super Bowl. Who am I talking about?
Yeah, I'm talking about Devontae Smith. I mean, whether he caught that or not, and obviously he didn't, but just his effort to get there, and it really truly was so close to being a catch. This is him and AJ Brown are basically 1 and 1A, and you can make the decision that AJ Brown is the actual one, the real alpha, but these guys are getting plenty of targets. Now, last game, because of the game script, Devontae Smith only had 3 targets. I mean, the Eagles didn't need to pass the ball once in the second half. Now, they did for some reason, even though that game was completely over. But you saw A.J. Brown get 8 targets. He caught half of them. And you saw Devontae Smith catch 2 out of 3. And honestly, I think that's part of the reason his line is depressed a little bit at 63.5 receiving yards. I think part of it, too, is people think, like on this show, that the Eagles are going to try to establish the run. But listen, let's throw last game out because that was a really weird game. The prior 7 games, he's eclipsed this total more often than not, with including, let's see, 61, 67, 115, 113, 126, and 64. Those are his yardage totals in the last 7 games. So he's eclipsing this more often than not. And back since week 9, he's received at least 8 targets. I think the Eagles are going to be aggressive at points in this game, particularly maybe early. And when they are, they're going to be attacking their condensed target share. Devontae Smith is a big part of that. I
agree with you. I like this play. Now, probably let me come to you, because yesterday a host for this particular brand was on HQ, and I thought he was very, very smart and really dialed into some different props. And that host, me, said Miles Sanders over 54.5 rush yards. Do you agree with me? He actually gave me the play. Do you like that?
I do indeed, Coach. Yeah, we gave this play out a couple hours ago on the site, actually, at 54.5. It moved up 3 yards just in the last 2 hours alone. So some closing line value there. I wrote about it. I think this line is going to ultimately close in the low 60s. I was actually shocked to see this not open at 60, 61, 62.5. So still a lot of value, in my opinion, on Miles Sanders. He is the engine of Philadelphia's rushing offense alongside Jalen Hurts. Average 15 rushing attempts per game in the regular season, 75 yards per game, eclipses in 12 of 19 appearances, including the playoffs. So I just think this number opens 7 to 9 yards too low. I haven't projected in the high 60s, actually. The Chiefs are somewhat of a neutral matchup, 15th in EPA allowed per rush. But with Jalen Hurts in the backfield, Miles Sanders averaged a full 1 yard higher as far as his yards per carry was concerned than without him. They can run on any team when Jalen Hurts is playing under center. So this is a great spot, in my opinion, to back Miles Sanders, who I anticipate is going to have 14 to 16 rushing attempts in this game. Very low number for him. And again, I expect this to close in the low 60s. So still a lot of value to be had.
Yeah, Ryan in the chat says, I like Sanders over rushing yards. I think he gets over 70 rushing yards. Would you want to ladder him perhaps this week, probably?
Yeah, I definitely think he has some sneaky opportunity to potentially bet on his alts. I like him over 70, over 80. I even think he's got a shot to go in the triple digits. I also sprinkled a little bit on his potentially being the MVP of the Super Bowl as well. So something we can touch on later.
All right, very good. And I know you've got a prop fun bet that surprised me a little bit. We're going to get to in just a couple of minutes. Now, last week, Maestro, we were on Kenneth Gainwell, and we were fading Kenneth Gainwell for his catches. Then Uncle Dave was on his yards and his rushing. We were kind of all over the place. He did catch at least 2. But this week, you're on an interesting prop with Kenneth Gainwell in a different way. What do you like?
Yeah, I love Kenneth Gainwell, but and I also want to say that the Miles Sanders prop there's something that supports it, is that Landon Dickerson, the Pro Bowl guard, should be back for this game, expected to play, got knocked out of the championship game. So that's good news for the offensive line. And Kenneth Gainwell, he's the best receiver among the running backs. And if you watch the game and you saw the move he put on Fred Warner, he had 2 catches, 1 for 9 yards, 1 for 17 yards. Now, he did that against the 49ers linebackers, and now he is facing a Chiefs linebacking core. You're talking about Bolton and Willie Gay, assuming he plays, but he's got the shoulder injury, not in the class of the 49ers linebackers. And, obviously they love using him out of the backfield. He got the most targets, the most catches. I'm going to go over 8.5 for the longest reception. I looked at the catches. It's 1.5, but it was juiced so high. I don't want to risk that. I looked at the yards, which is 12.5. I don't mind that, but I'd rather just go longest catch over 8.5 for Kenneth Gainwell. Just if you look at the Chiefs, where they struggle is in the middle of that field because of those linebackers.
That's exactly what I was getting ready to say, literally verbatim. Because, RJ, I'm going to come to you. The last thing Larry said, we saw the Bengals when they were successful, whether it was the tight end, whether it was the wide receivers coming across, that's where they were open. Would you lean into Dallas Goedert this week?
It's possible. There's just so many weapons that they don't need to necessarily feed him as much if the cornerback injuries come home to roost for the Chiefs and they can target those receivers more and get some help there. So I'm not really looking to play Goddard either way. I might look to the under if it gets pushed up a little bit, but I just think that there's going to be different ways to exploit this defense that, cornerback wise and injury wise. And we'll see how it goes. And, once the game goes, but maybe I'm wrong. I didn't think Hayden Hurst would have as big a role in the game. It seemed like every time I turned around in that Bengals game, he was catching passes. And I'm, as a guy that had Jamar Chase over 6.5 receptions, I'm like, please throw it to him one more time. And they did not. So I missed out on that one by a half a catch. So we'll see if Goddard can do the same thing.
All right, Mikey, let's finish the Eagles conversation with something you said on the live show Sunday. And you said, I believe A.J. Brown is still hurt. His last 2 games, 4 for 28, 4 for 22. I think you're on to something. Do you still believe that after this game?
I'm not like all over the idea that he's still really, really hurt. I think it definitely, the hamstring injury is still nagging a little bit. I'm more worried about Jalen Hurts throwing him the football, honestly. I think Jalen Hurts has looked terrible in the last 2 games throwing the football. As far as the game A.J. Brown had in that last game, I think A.J. Brown probably would have approached 100 receiving yards had he needed to. So that part of it, we didn't really get a fair shake on. There just wasn't a massive need for them to continue to go his way. There will be in this game. So I think that between that and the amount of time off that he's going to have here, I don't think that I will be considering him injured like I was the last 2 weeks.
All right, that'll be a big, big deal for the Eagles. If he can come back 100% healthy with Devontae Smith on the other side, they should be good to go. And I'm expecting a mini shootout, but maybe 24-20, 27-20, which would still mean the under is coming in. All right, we've got a couple more sections to get to here on our mega preview. And as I always say, turn on your notifications every time we start a new show, new content, whatever it is. And next week, we'll have a huge, on Friday, Propapalooza is what they're calling it. I don't even know. Propapalooza. That's what they're calling it. And I believe some of these guys will be on that show as well, Friday of Super Bowl week. But let's talk MVP. RJ, I'm coming right back to you. I feel like if this is going to be your pick, then you think the Eagles are going to win. And you and I were getting along so well until this moment. What do you like?
Yeah, Hurts MVP plus 125. It's not necessarily that the Eagles are going to win. I think I'm probably leaning that way, but definitely play Hurts MVP at plus 125 over Eagles money line at minus 125, 50-cent difference there. And if the Eagles win, I figure Hurts probably is going to be the MVP. They can spread it around a little bit on their offensive weapons. Even you guys are talking Miles Sanders. I mean, they have a couple other running backs that are playing well too. They can spread it around in the run game, as we've seen the last few weeks as well. So I think really it all coalesces around Hurts being the guy that is doing it with scoring if they do win. So I just love that gap there. Where KC is plus 105 on the money line, Mahomes is plus 130, only a 25-cent gap there. And even in that case, I think think there's more of a chance a non-quarterback wins on the Kansas City side, whether it's Kelsey getting multiple touchdowns. They're obviously going to be more funneled into one target there on the Kansas City side, or if the running game gets going, Pacheco gets going, he could have a chance. Maybe if the Eagles don't score a ton of points after their few blowouts coming into this game, a defensive guy gets in the mix like Chris Jones. So I think really there's more opportunities to kind of maximize different players on the Kansas City side than there is on the Eagles side. And I just think that it's too far of a gap to go plus 125 on Hurts MVP between their money line. So I think that's good value right now. And they probably need to throw 2 touchdowns to do it. I know everybody was bagging on that prop a little earlier and talking about the under. If that gets to over 1.5 gets to plus money, I might be looking that way too.
All right. Very good. A lot of good analysis right there. A lot of great analysis right there. Maestro, let's come to you. What do you have in this particular little scenario? I know you have another pick. Oh, no. Oh.
Sorry. Had to do that once. Hassan Reddick has come down, but it's still 40-1 on Caesars. I still think there's value with the sprinkle there, a la Von Miller wrecking that Super Bowl. When you think about Patrick Mahomes probably dropping back 40 times on that ankle, with Andrew Wiley giving up the second most pressures of all tackles in the league, and Orlando Brown on the other side, the fourth most tackles. So how much are they going to help Andrew Wiley against Hassan Reddick, who single-handedly destroyed the 49ers' chances and has 19.5 sacks, 6 forced fumbles. This guy was the steal of the offseason, and I believe he's upset that he is not going to be the defensive player of the year. So I think Hassan Reddick has a great chance, especially if the Eagles are ahead, because he only had 1 half to rush the passer against the 49ers because they didn't throw the ball. They couldn't throw the ball. They didn't have a quarterback in the second half. He'll have a whole game of rushing the passer. If he makes 3 impact plays, he could win MVP. What?
I think it's a stretch. For a defensive. We never see it. I'm
Von
not saying
Miller.
it can't happen.
Von Miller.
Okay. Once in 40 years?
That was 8 years ago, I believe.
Yeah. All right.
More than that, you had Malcolm Smith in the Seattle Super Bowl too.
He had the Cowboys cornerback who lucked into 2 interceptions one year.
I mean, that was ridiculous, though. Come on. Nothing else happened. Literally. He wasn't not even close to an all-pro. They threw it right to him. I could have done that. All right. Now, Proppy, let me come to you. There was a very funny story a few years ago when Carrie Underwood sang the national anthem. She was at a party the night before. Everybody kept asking her how long was it going to take her to sing it. She didn't know. She's not a gambler. She's not a bettor. I thought it was funny. This year, Chris Stapleton, huge country star. He's singing the national anthem. You are into this bet. Talk to me.
I am into this bet. I actually, I'm excited about Chris Stapleton as well. Big fan of his. I don't even know what the line is, though, here, Coach, on his odds, but I'll be interested to learn. I do know someone who may or may not have access to his rehearsal times. So when I get that information, I will be sure to share it. But I am excited that Chris Stapleton will be doing it.
I will say this. Go ahead, RJ.
I've seen a line. It's like 2 minutes, 1 second, 2 minutes, 3 seconds, somewhere around there right now.
Okay, it's always between 156 and 202. That's always kind of the number. I will say this. I'm a huge country music fan. Chris Stapleton, his music is slow, and it's with feeling, which means you should lean to the over because I think he'll take a lot of time, play a little guitar riff, spread it out a little bit. That's how I think it's going to go because that's how all of his music goes. All of his music goes. All right, so we've heard from the other 3, but we got to close with Mikey and Sia saying something when it comes to a fun prop or just something that you're looking at. So, Mikey, let me come to you. You're not exactly the fun bettor guy. Like, you're more serious, but are there fun prop bets that perhaps you look at?
You know, I love playing the anthem there, and I will say for Chris Stapleton, though, look, a 30-second commercial runs you about $7 million this year. You might as well take as long as you can. It's getting a heck of a lot of value. An extra 5 seconds extrapolated is actually a significant deal. So I like the over on that one. It offends people when I say this sometimes, but some sports books give you a minus 102 on the coin flip. That minus 102 on a coin flip bet might be one of the better bets you make all season when you're having to pay minus 115. Just throwing that out there. I know it's offensive to some, but it's not incorrect.
Well, anybody that's offended by that takes themselves a little bit too seriously. Now, Sia, I'm going to end with this because you and I are athletes that have played multiple sports during our time, right? So I love the cross-sport play. So the Celtics are playing, like, for instance, Jason Tatum. Who will score more points, Tatum or the Chiefs? Do you like bets like that on Super Bowl Sunday?
Oh, no, I actually don't. If I was going to bet that, if that bet was available, I would be taking Jason Tatum for sure without even knowing the matchup. But I do have a couple fun bets that I think are interesting. First of all, I wanted to pick up on what RJ said about the Super Bowl MVP. He mentioned Isaiah Pacheco. I think it's really interesting because he's 35-40-1. And listen, we know this is traditionally given to the quarterbacks, but if there was one person on offense to get it, and it's not going to be the quarterbacks, because again, if you can't really pick their receivers because typically you're just going to give it to the quarterback if the receiver group did really well. But Pacheco, because he returns punts, or I should say returns kicks, I think he's at least in play. If the game plan for the Chiefs ends up being we're running the ball a lot, Pacheco gets maybe 2 rushing touchdowns, which is not impossible. Maybe a kickoff return to a touchdown. Listen, the Mahomes story, Jalen Hurts, those are great stories for MVP. But Pacheco is a 7th round rookie, picked 251 overall. I think if you were going to sprinkle something in a long range, I think Isaiah Pacheco is that guy at 35-1. The other bet I want to mention that I kind of like is Kenny Gainwell plus 425 anytime touchdown. I love how he played last week. To me, he looked as good, if not better, than Miles Sanders, at least in the open field. So I definitely think plus 425 is a decent number for Kenneth Gainwell. And the last thing, it was Larry Brown who had those interceptions with Dallas. Yeah. And speaking of money, he got paid by the Raiders the year after, even though he really wasn't that good of a corner. So Raiders being the Raiders, but I remember watching that. That was interesting.
Number 24 in your scorebooks. Number 1 in Cowboys' hearts. By the way, you mentioned the name Larry Brown. Nobody has made more money name Larry Brown for doing nothing than Larry Brown and then the basketball coach Larry Brown. I was there with the Knicks. They paid him $40 million not to coach. $40 million not to coach. All right, it is that time of the show, and we got to make this 2 minutes or less, gentlemen. It's our recap brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook and Casino. We're going to recap all of our best bets that we have throughout the show. Maestro, if you don't mind, start us off.
Okay, I love Kenneth Gainwell over 8.5 yards for his longest receptions. You saw what he did to the 49ers linebackers last week. Now he's going to face a much worse linebacking core. He's the best receiver among the running backs. 1 catch, 9 yards gets us home.
RJ, go.
I like Travis Kelce to score a touchdown. That's all he does in the playoffs, is score touchdowns almost every single game. I don't think minus 110 is giving him enough credit there. I like Jalen Hurts to win MVP. When you compare it to the Eagles' money line, it's just a lot more valuable bet for you to make there for your payout. And I would take that over the money line right now.
Love that idea. See ya. Talk to me.
Yeah, Devontae Smith, over his last 7 games, he has eclipsed this 62.5 receiving yard mark 6 times, or I should say 5 times, in 3 of those going over 100 yards. I just like him to get down the field against this secondary. And I do think, again, that the Eagles will be aggressive at certain points in this game. They certainly can't just lock it in like they did against the Niners, knowing that they didn't really have to score anymore. The Chiefs are always going to be trouble, and they're always going to press the Eagles no matter what the score is. So I think Devontae Smith gets his over 62.5 receiving yards.
M squared, you're up.
Same game parlay, banking on some market efficiency here, going Chiefs plus 11.5 on the alternate spread, over 39.5 in the game, and then Patrick Mahomes over 1.5 touchdowns, minus 109 altogether.
Probably bring us home.
Yeah, I've got Miles Sanders over 54.5 rushing yards. In my opinion, this should have opened around 62.5 yards, average 15 rushing attempts, 75 rushing yards per game in the regular season, had double-digit carries in 18 of 19 games, including the playoffs. This is a good spot for him, especially with Jalen Hurts under center. I think he's going to be the engine of the Eagles' rushing attack.
And that is our Super Bowl Mega Preview recap, presented as always by Caesars Sportsbook and Casino. Now, we are still a little bit less than 2 weeks away from the big game. I encourage you to turn on your notifications for any of the content that we have. And then we start from Arizona. We fly over there on Sunday. We'll be a part, me and the Maestro, be a part of the coverage all week long. And then a reminder, next Friday, the Early Edge Prop Palooza on Friday. All the props you could possibly want will be in that show. But as you know, we end this show asking my guys, my crew, what's the number one thing as they move forward into the Super Bowl that they're looking at to really set the tone? Mikey, start us off.
Yeah, it's obviously the health of the Kansas City side. What kind of news do we get starting tomorrow on injury reports? And then what I'm most looking forward to, Isaiah Pacheco. I want to see a receiving prop. You've got the rushing number at 52.5, the combo number 64.5. Please, as Larry said, give us 12.5 on that receiving number.
Boom. Speaking of Larry, Maestro, go.
There's something that could actually benefit the Chiefs from Carl Sheffers being the ref. Everybody who is a Chiefs fan knows how much they hate Carl Sheffers. He was the ref in the Bucs Super Bowl where they called 42 yards of pass interference right before halftime, and that game turned into a blowout. He also called a holding that cost them a chance to beat the Steelers in the playoffs, and Travis Kelce said he's not even fit to ref at Foot Locker. So everybody who's a Chiefs fan has been talking about this, but I think with all the coverage about how bad Sheffers is for the Chiefs, you may get him wanting to prove that he's equitable, and you may get a better whistle than everyone thinks.
We shall see. Proppy, you're up.
Yeah, the health of the Chiefs wide receivers is going to be the focal point of all of my research. It's ultimately going to determine how we can approach Chiefs props. So just going to be waiting very closely to see who's going to be active, who's going to be inactive. We saw what the Chiefs offense looked in the second half against the Bengals, could barely move the football. When Kelce was bracketed outside of those penalties, really didn't pick up many yards at all. So ultimately it's going to come down to who's healthy and how to and that'll determine how to approach Kansas City's props.
True story. Every year, Proppy buys a generator because he is too afraid the lights are going to go out when he's up 24/7 in the lab. True story. True story. He works that much in the lab during Super Bowl 2 weeks. All right, Counselor, you're up.
Well, it pays off for Proppy because if you recall, he got the exact score bet right last year when we were doing our Super Bowl live stream live. He comes back at the end of it and says, I got the exact score right. It was something crazy like 50-1. So Proppy is the best in the Super Bowl. And by the way, going back to Maestro, really rich that the Kansas City Chiefs are complaining about officials. That is just so rich. But what I'm looking for, listen, this defensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles, first of all, we know Mahomes is still kind of dinged up, and he will be during the Super Bowl, but then that receiver core is really dinged up too. And I think this game can be won simply by the defensive line and the pressure. I don't know that it will be or not, but I think that's really the key to this game. We know the Eagles' offensive line and defensive line are dominant. Part of the reason for that is because Jalen Hurts is only being paid less than $2 million against the cap this year on his rookie deal. So it's the defense here for the Eagles. Can they overpower that Kansas City offensive line?
All right, I'm just curious, see, because you brought it up a couple of times during the show. What were you so irritated by? The punt return at 24 yards that the refs didn't run, the push out of bounds when he was 2 steps out of bounds that they didn't push him. What were you so upset about?
Okay, well, on the Sky Moore punt return, there were 2 pushes in the back there. I mean, that's not really there's no controversy in that. And on the personal foul penalty, when Mahomes, obviously, he clearly got hit out of bounds. That certainly was a penalty. Where there were 2 holds by different offensive linemen on that play. So there should have at least been some sort of offsetting penalties there. And by the way, if you want to talk about late hits, go check out the Joe Mixon tape when he's got both feet out of bounds and he's almost 3 feet, maybe a yard out of bounds, or he's certainly completely out of bounds, and he gets clocked by one of the Kansas City defensive players. So it's just one of those things. All I'm asking for is equity. If you're gonna call it here, you got to call it here. That's all I'm asking for as a fan and a bettor, frankly.
I agree. That's all I want too. That's all I want. Well, Big Cheesy has your back. He said, "I'm gonna see his side with this." Absolutely ridiculous. I didn't see the holds. I was too busy looking at the field goal that was made. Yes, Maestro.
Can you hear Sia just making that same argument in court? All I want, Judge, is equity. Just give me equity.
I've said it 1,000 times. 1,000 times, to your point.
See, if you want equity, you can still grab him at plus 105.
I don't even grab who at 105.
The Chiefs, plus 105 if you'd like a little equity in that team.
No equity. No, it's the Eagles or nothing for me. We'll see.
Perhaps maybe a showdown. See, we'll have to wait and see.
Not against you, because that will guarantee the Chiefs win. It's got to be against somebody else.
All right, let's end the show with this. If you don't know about what RJ does every single year for the Super Bowl, your mind is about to be blown. RJ, please, one more time, educate the good people what we have at SportsLine and also what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, will the opening kickoff be a touchback? Yes, right now is minus 180. Will there be 3 unanswered score in the games? I don't think that one's posted yet. Will there be a score in the first 6 minutes of the game? Yes, no, or even right now. Just the Super Bowl is unlike anything you've ever seen. There's so hundreds of props. They post you can bet on almost, you can bet on total penalties, you can bet on coaching challenge over unders, you can bet on everything. We're going to get into all of that. We have our initial article posted at CBS Sports called Super Bowl 57 Props Guide. Just Google that, Google CBS Sports, you'll see it. Odds picks for more than 100 Chiefs and Eagles props. Putting all the odds in there now as they come up. We'll be following up with all of our SportsLine content in there, linking off to that, give you some analysis, give away a few picks in the article as well. But you'll have to get to the SportsLine page for all the good stuff where we break down all those obscure props, tell you about how many times things happen in the Super Bowl, 29 out of 56 times, 32 out of 56 times. It's always great to break that stuff down in there. So go ahead and check that out, and be sure to refresh and check back over the next 10 days, 11 days, because we're just going to keep on adding to it until it's a beast.
I say it all the time. Do you want to do the work at home? Do you want to put in the time? I know the answer to that. It's no, you don't. So come to us, educate and entertain. That's what everybody does in the crew here at the Early Edge. Damn, what a good way to start the Super Bowl 2 weeks. Turn on your notifications. Don't miss one single second of this content. We're here every single day, multiple times a day, every single sport. It doesn't matter. But with all that being said, 6 wide, there's only one thing left to do. And I believe you all know what that is. You've got your marching orders. Let's take all of these Super Bowl tickets straight to the pay window. For my entire crew, love them all. Maestro, the stoic one, M Squared, Proppy, and the counselor. I am the coach. And what about the snake? Doing work behind the scenes, all the graphics, the rundowns, everything. Can't do it without Snake as well. I am the coach. We're fired up. We're ready to go right here. Only one brand you even need to worry about. We like to call it the Early Edge. Good luck.